Good afternoon, Manufacturing All-Stars, and welcome to this episode of Manufacturing Happy Hour. As you probably know by now, Manufacturing Happy Hour also has a podcast component to it, and since many of you are still getting familiar with that, I'm going to be doing what I'll call some mini-sodes, giving you a preview to some of the longer episodes that you can find on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Episode 3, which is all about growing manufacturing in transitioning economies. If you're wondering what a transitioning economy is, it could be something like a Rust Belt city like Detroit or Cleveland that went through an economic boom in the mid-20th century, but as tech jobs have moved to the coasts, they're now trying to find their way and reestablish themselves as economic powerhouses. Or it could be, say, a country like Indonesia or Vietnam that's trying to establish itself as a strong manufacturing economy for the first time. So we have two great guests to tackle the topic in that episode. The first is Michael Goldberg, who is a professor at Case Western Reserve University, who also runs a very successful Coursera course called Growing Entrepreneurship in Transitioning Economies, otherwise known as Beyond Silicon Valley. Brandon Cornuke is the other guest in that episode, who's the vice president of startup services at Magnet in Cleveland. Magnet is the facility where we did the interview, and that's actually a spot where manufacturers in Northeast Ohio can go get help to grow their resources, go through the startup stages, etc. It's a resource meant to help grow manufacturing in Northeast Ohio, like I just said. Now, a few things you can expect from that episode. The first thing we're going to talk about there is how the future of manufacturing will be technology-driven. Brandon and Michael give some great examples of some of the companies they've seen come through Magnet. Second, we're also going to talk about how in order to establish a spot as really a manufacturing powerhouse, you're going to need both investments from the private sector as well as the public sector. We have some stories on how that's gone on in Northeast Ohio and around the world as well. Finally, they're going to talk about how higher education will continue to play a big role in readying people for STEM jobs. And that's not just folks coming out of college as engineers. We're also talking about trade jobs and things like that that are starting to see a resurgence. So Michael and Brandon bring a lot of good stories to contextualize these things in that episode. Make sure you go to wherever you get your podcasts. I'd love to encourage you to go to iTunes for that. You can go to manufacturinghappyhour.com/iTunes. That's the easiest way to get there. And make sure to look for episode 3. If you love the show, my call to action is to please leave a 5-star rating and review. It can be as short as one sentence, and I'd love to see that on iTunes if you can. So with that, make sure to tune in to episode 3 of the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast. And in the meantime, stay innovative, stay thirsty, and we'll see you wherever you listen to your podcasts. Cheers.